Welcome to Voices in the Wilderness, conversations about church and leader health. Thank you so much for listening. We encourage you to keep the conversation going. Voices in the Wilderness is brought to you by Preparing for Amazement Ministries, where we empower and equip churches and leaders to create lasting and transformational health. Visit amazed15.org to learn more. We also welcome any comments or suggestions. Simply email us at podcast@amazed15.org. My name is Marcus Carlson, and today our guests are Jen Binford and Joe Oliver. Welcome, Jen and Joe.
Hey.
Thank you. Hello.
It's been so fun doing this together. We're kind of coming towards the end of the year and the end of kind of this series on habits of healthy leaders. And so, so today we're going to jump in with habit 6 that healthy leaders engage in self-care and Sabbath. So this, I'm going to have to try to restrain myself because this is, as you both know, kind of a hobby horse for me.
Yeah.
For good reason.
It's well intentioned, you know. I'm an 8. You know, you're either all in or all out. So for the two of you, how do you like in your own life? How do you understand and apply this concept of Sabbath from Scripture? Because there's lots of different ways to look at it and interpret it. So how do you understand and apply that in your life?
Go for it, Joe.
Oh, you want me to go? Okay, well, that's fine.
Just call me Joe.
I'm probably not as thorough in this topic as the both of you. But how I've learned, I've not ever been really great at Sabbath. And it took a bit for me to kind of read and think through it, for me to come to a place where I think of it in twofold. So through the kind of the biblical lens of rest and what does it mean to rest, uh, both as a people and as a land. What does it mean to rest? Those seem to be things that are congruent themes in the text. And so, um, being someone who doesn't rest well, that's hard to do. Um, and so I've had to practice, for myself, the ability to um, unplug, and walk away from things. So that's one aspect, rest. But there's also a thing about Sabbath that, what should that rest lead to? And I've kind of connected language of like, um, almost like that shalom peace aspect as well. That rest, not simply to just not do something so I get energy, but also rest in a way that I'm reconnecting to the Lord. Rest. So, there was a season where it was like, oh, just, go outside and like, don't do work or things like that. And even then I found that unhelpful. Um, and so, oh, did I lose someone here?
No,
There they are.
I pressed a button and you disappeared.
Marcus is pushing buttons.
Well, I tried to do the names go away, but I forgot in that screen to add you. So you don't exist there. So
No. Well,
all good.
I don't know if I cut out, but
You did
but
not.
for me,
He was resting.
Yeah, you did not.
Yeah.
We did not lose your volume.
Okay. So rest, to take a break, yes, to let my body recoup, kind of like the land aspect. And rest in that I reconnect to the peace that only the Lord can bring. Because I have found that there are times that I'm like resting, right? I'm physically recuperating, but I'm actually not finding peace. And so, devotion times, prayer times, quiet times, I also try to connect to my rest times. The difference between me and maybe some is that I have a hard time allocating specificity to when to rest. So I'll take incremental breaks through the day. I'll tap in and out throughout the day and week. And so I don't know that I have like a day that I rest. Like Marcus, I know you kind of do have a designated day. I don't know that my brain can function that way. I don't know that there's ever a day that I'm not processing information in a, constructive way. And so I don't know. So I find myself having to get creative in finding moments and times, not that have an ebb and flow to them, not necessarily like a hard, fast um, day of the week type thing. And I don't know if that's good or bad or if it's biblical or not. I kind of jump around on that thought process, but that's kind of how I think of it. I think of it as personal and land. And if I were to categorize those two, personal is me finding peace with the Lord. Land is like that rest so that the land can heal and be productive again. That's my body.
That makes sense. Well, and that's why it's the question. We all have different ways of interpreting that and understanding and applying that. What about you, Jen?
Ah,
How do you
so I think
understand and apply this concept of Sabbath?
that it's much needed, and I by nature am a fast-paced, high efficiency person who overfunctions to I don't maybe I'm not really gonna overanalyze why, but that's just how I function. So, where my mind goes when you ask this question is to the passage that says that Sabbath was not made for, or humans were not made for Sabbath, but Sabbath was made for us. So, like, it was intentionally designed for us in the way that we're wired. And the way that I experience Sabbath rest is more connecting to God, like in a place where, or a space where I'm acknowledging God's presence and like being with. And I do have a day because of the way that I'm wired. I need to, and I now actually crave it. But for me, rest doesn't mean doing nothing, that it's being still in God's presence and acknowledging God's presence. But every Wednesday, what I do is I generally do some kind of exercise because that's just how I'm wired. And to me, that's restful because I love moving. But I spend most of the morning reading. And that's just like one of my most favorite things to do. And then in the afternoon, I hang out with a mentor friend of mine every Wednesday. Or we have a prayer group that Joe and I are a part of. So it's all things that help me feel rejuvenated and renewed and experiencing that shalom. That's you probably noticed me smiling, Marcus, when he said that
Oh, of course. And I kept myself
yeah.
restrained. It's like your trigger words, your happy trigger words.
Yes, because that's the word that I believe that we were literally designed and created for. It's in God's presence in this state of overwhelming peace, and just it's like the eye of the storm that we're in this crazy chaotic space. And the reason I choose Wednesday is because I live in a house with 4 teenagers and all of their friends are always here. And I, as much of as an extrovert that I am, I also know that I need, just like right now, my house is quiet because they're at school. I just need a space that's not chaotic to where I can just be in the quiet and make pie if I want to, or sourdough bread, or whatever it is. Um, yeah, in our refuge space where there's not chaos, because some people can Sabbath, but the weekends are not Sabbathful, if that's a word. I think I just made that up for me because it's just so full of other people. And as a mom and as a nurturer, if people are around, it becomes about them. So I would say Sabbath is experiencing God's presence in a way that's renewing for me and rejuvenating. Is that a good word?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It makes sense. And again, that's why just getting your different perspectives. I'm pretty literal about it in terms of like the rhythm of one every seven, but flexible in terms of, it's not, I always say it's not about doing nothing. It's about not doing your work and doing the things that give you life. I mean, my brain doesn't turn off either, but I also try in the Sabbath to intentionally, like when I'm like, oh, what about this? I'm like, nope, not today. Not today, Marcus. That, like, just helps me recognize is that we're all very driven people. We're all fairly keep it moving people. And so, like, just that recognition that somehow the world and the kingdom can unfold without Marcus one day a week is kind of a beautiful thing for sure. I mean, this habit talks about not just Sabbath, but self care. And obviously, Sabbath is a part of self care. But for you two, why is self care so essential and why is it so difficult? Because I think we can all agree that it's really difficult. So, why do you see self care as kind of so essential yet so difficult from your experience?
As I mentioned, I have 4 kids and they're all teenagers, and I am an extrovert and I'm a nurturer. And so I didn't realize, but I took the love God, love others to an extreme where I was dying to self to the point that it was at a detriment to myself. And I didn't realize it until I was exhausted to the point that I didn't know, like I was emoting and having all these strange emotional states that I just wasn't able to cope in the same way, and realize what I had done is I had been living just for others, not acknowledging that I am a human who also has very human needs. And I never made space. I shouldn't say never, but I rarely made space for self care and outside of running. So to be sure to, it's part of my nature to die to self to a detriment, I guess. And that's why it was hard for me. And I didn't realize I was doing it until I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, I used to become an
Yeah,
expert in burnout. Lots of practice.
Yeah.
yeah, I think to piggyback off of what Jen's saying there, I think that so I started ministry in full-time ministry in 25 years ago, and I remember the narrative of doing ministry was in a sense like I always had to be on for other people. So it's like someone's in the hospital. It doesn't matter if it's a Saturday afternoon, like, oh, you're heading out, or there's some need there's always this crisis. There's always a need, and I wonder if I wonder if there's this narrative, whether it's taught or caught, that you put yourself last, which is kind of what Jen's alluding to, is that your job as a minister is to just be there for people, to serve, to give. And it's this undertone of like, I can't spend time on myself because, I've got too many other people that, the church needs me, right?
And it was
And
seen as
there's sister so and so.
yeah.
Yeah, there's brother so and so, sister, whatever, all these people that are just constantly demanding my attention, that because it's my job, I need to not, like, I stop what I'm doing to go and be there for someone else. And that kind of, we've talked about this in other episodes, like this, like the power of setting boundaries, and the impact that the lack of boundaries can have on your own self-care. So there's a little bit of like overlap with that conversation.
For sure.
But I just think it's difficult because there is this idea, and most pastors I talk to, I'm a part of a pastors group, and I remember hearing stories of just like, I'm so busy, I got to do this, and da, 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 and it's just this constant I can't ever stop mentality, because that's what's expected of me, whether outrightly said or just, again, you assume that. So I think there's that problem, and then I wondered too, for a lot of people that are maybe generationally, maybe I'm going to be 50 in a few years, and so I'm a little bit up there, but this idea of self-care, is relatively new, I think, in some traditions where it's like, it's almost like when counseling was like an, oh, you're going to counseling? What? Oh my goodness, you must be really bad off. And it's like, well, no, actually, I can go to counseling because I need to actually improve myself and they can help me process. You know what I mean? Like, we're just at a stage in life where even these terms that we use aren't seen as a negative. And I wonder if like some people struggle with this idea of like, I'm a pastor, right? I'm a minister, whatever title you throw in church leadership onto that. And thus I have to be, like constantly giving and, you know, and what does it look like to care for myself? Maybe that's not something people consider. Those are just thoughts I have in relation to that. What about you, Marcus? What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, I think obviously it's critical because we can only give what we have, and so if we're giving the emptiest, most broken, most selfish, worn part of ourselves, then that's what people are going to get. And so I think that's huge. And there is this idea, especially in the American culture and in American Christianity, like that busyness is next to godliness. I mean, I remember this was probably back in 2003. I had a youth leader that took a picture of a bumper sticker on a car that said, "Jesus is coming, look busy." Right. And so I think we've got this idea that, which is really warped scripturally, like the more that we do for God, the better. Right. And so, I mean, we celebrate workaholism in the church and we celebrate burnout and we look at every moral failing. And there's three things you see. You see no self care, you see little or no accountability, and you see a culture that celebrates the wrong things, whether that be workaholism or attraction or numbers. You look at every single one of those from large to small. I think it goes back to that. And so I think it's essential because, even as a parent, right? Like that in my bad days, like my days where I'm tired and grumpy and anxious, like I'm a worse of a parent, right? Like I'm on edge or I'm, you know, whatever it might be. And so I think it's the same thing with those that we kind of lead. But I do think it takes work to care for yourself because it feels selfish. Yet, I mean, even the Son of God rested, right? Even Jesus was like, I need a timeout from these bozos.
Yeah.
And I need to get away. And so I just think that, and I think we do this ordering of the great commandment, like, oh, well, he says, you love God, love others, love yourself. That's the order. It's a very American, like Western thing to do. But I think the better approach is these things. I think of the equilateral triangle, and I Jen's used to me my triangles and threes, but like, that these are equally important for wholeness, right? And so if I'm not loving myself, it is actually harder to love others and to love God. That the times I've actually been angriest at other people, including the people I love the most, it's actually because I'm really angry at myself. And whether I failed or couldn't do something, or and so I think the intertwining of those things is so important. And healthcare is holistic, right? Like, I mean, we look at it from not just physical and spiritual and emotional, but vocational and relational, right? All of those things that are a part of who we are. And I've never met a leader, inside or outside of the religious world, who had a major failing, who was taking care of themselves. And I've met hundreds and read of thousands. Um, and so I think the stakes are actually pretty high, if you ask me, but I'm a little
So
passionate about it.
yeah, let me devil's advocate here because I wonder if there are people that are listening that in their brain they're doing like the Rolodex of like, well, what about this? What about this? And so if I were just a devil's advocate to say, play for that person, maybe what someone's thinking, thoughts like verses where whoever loves his life needs to lose it. The first among you will become the least. No greater love to someone who lays down their life for another. So the ethic of the kingdom of God seems to be built on a decrease of self
For sure.
for the sake of others. So one might argue, like a little bit to like Jen's kind of like loving people so much that it destroys you. How do you wrestle with texts that seem to indicate that the ethic of the kingdom is about your death to yourself? And how does that relate to actually then prioritizing yourself and self-care? How do you reconcile those two?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's pretty simple. There's a huge difference between self denial and self hatred.
Okay.
It's not as fine of a line as we think it is, right? That, and I think, you know, one of the ways that this has been expressed in my working with leaders, how many times do I have to tell a pastor, hey, that gospel you preach, that's for you too? And
Mhm.
I think that's a lot of times where the line comes, right? That yeah, I can put myself last, but that doesn't, but I still have to love myself, right? I think there's this line between, humility, uh, humility and love, and this line of like, I'm just gonna, be this, self-proclaimed martyr because look at me, I didn't sleep, and oh, look at me, I missed my kids' stuff. Like, this is not crap that we should be standing on a stage and bragging about. And again, I think that's where the line is, right? That for me there is, and I just don't think it's as fine of a line as we think it is. I think we tell ourselves it's a fine line because it's a good excuse, but I would argue you a huge part of self-love is self-denial, but you can take self-denial to the place of self-hatred, no question in my mind. And again, I don't think the line is fine. Is there a lot of nuance here? Sure, with language there's always a lot of nuance, but I mean, that would be my response. I know Jen's got something to say about this too.
Yeah. What do you
Oh,
think, Jen?
yeah. For me, what I'm thinking about is the more you are, that's why I was trying, when I was explaining what rest is to me, or Sabbath, the more that I am showing up in spaces my best self, then I actually have greater capacity. So, say, like in the most obvious example, if I sleep for 2 hours and then I show up in a space, I have about this much capacity to be others focused, right? Because I just physically, like, we weren't created for that. But if I show up rested and show up my best self, feeling confident, like a holy confidence that's rejuvenated and like experiencing that shalom, then I have greater capacity. And I actually I bought this water bottle for my doctoral project. Where's the camera? There we
No,
go.
you had it. You were good.
Off.
Oh,
Anyway, that you can't, there's like no give, but if you pour into, like, if you're poured into, then your capacity like grows.
I think this is the second time the bottle has made the podcast, actually.
There
no,
you
I
go.
like it.
Yeah.
On my desk. You're welcome for that. Because it really does matter, because the more I um am like self-aware. So, say example of counseling. If I address the parts of me that need healing, then I'm showing up my best self for my kids or the people in the congregation or the staff that I work with or you guys. That if I have spaces of healing in, then I have greater capacity to do what you're saying and to show up, whether it's because part of my role, even on staff as a pastor, is to care for the homeless who have these really hard stories. And so the only way that I'm able to do that is if I am filled up myself, so then I can put others before, because the things that we as ministers are dealing with and in ministry, they're heavy things, like showing up. There was a kiddo who was lost in our neighborhood last week. And so showing up, serving at the funeral, like, these are not light things. And so if I'm not showing up my best self, then I'm going to actually end up not able to die to self. Does that make sense? It's a
Yeah,
kind of a,
Yeah, I mean,
that's good.
when we're not our best selves, we're driven to selfishness, which is actually
Yeah.
contradictory to self-denial. But I think self-love does have to involve some level. Any love that I have involves some sort of sacrifice,
yeah.
right?
And
Like, I
there's
mean,
a,
think about it. Like, love of kids, love of friends, love of whatever. There's always sacrifice.
Yeah. But not to the detriment, right? Like, I do feel like there's guardrails and boundaries around what love actually is. And there is a piece of it that's self love. It's not selfishness, it's like a self care. That's why I like words like self love or self care. It's actually caring for our basic needs that we have as well, so that we can then actually be able to do that with greater capacity. um, yeah, and the more I am having others, because again, one of the ways that I am filled up the most is through safe people like you guys, just spending time dialoguing, like, hey, this thing happened, and will you help me process this, or that kind of thing, because then I'm not just spinning out in my head when I'm trying to engage and connect with, the homeless person in the lobby, or this grieving person from our neighborhood, or one of my teenagers who's being annoying. That it's not coming from some other emotional state, and I'm able to actually connect in that space. But you have to lean into the self-love, self-care stuff, not selfishness, because there is a distinction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good stuff.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. I think for someone that's listening, that's maybe dealing with two different dialogues, an internal dialogue of like, well, I got to die to myself because that's what the scriptures say, or an external dialogue that the elders are telling me I need to be on 24/7. How do we combat those dialogues? And maybe that'll go into the final question of like, what's a step forward for someone that's dealing with these realities of, you know, they're taking very seriously the kingdom of God, which then sometimes causes burnout because they think that's, they got to work themselves to death,
Yeah.
and or they have a eldership and oversight committee that has an expectation of them to work themselves to death, and so there's just no time for, like, I imagine people going, I don't have time for that. What do you mean self-care? I don't have time, like I'm too busy. And so that, I think that's the challenge of even this conversation for pastors is, you know those types
Again,
of
there's
narratives.
always going to be stuff to do. There's always going to be needs.
Yeah.
So it's a choice. It's a choice.
Yeah.
And I had a friend, a church member, say, I wish I could Sabbath. I'm like, you can Sabbath. Like, you can actually choose to not be attached to your phone on Saturday or Sunday. Like,
Yeah.
the world is not falling. The world is not ending. The sky is not falling. By the way, like, you are well off enough and old enough to just be retired anyway. So I don't understand what's going on here. And so it is fascinating to me. What tips would you guys give folks, to better engage in self-care and Sabbath, whether things you've been successful with or things that you've seen others not do or not done yourself successfully?
I would say one is to identify what your needs are based on how you're wired. And what I mean by that is, and making space for it too, right? Like, I know that there's a lot of people who wouldn't consider exercise, for example, like restful Sabbath. Like, I know
I am
Joe
one of
loves
those.
doing yard work. Like, that sounds like awfulness to me. And I have a friend who volunteers at the community garden across the street from me. I'm like, why would you spend your free time pulling weeds? Like, that sounds horrible. Like, what are you doing? And I know that other people would say that about the things I choose to do. And so just being mindful and knowing, like, be still long enough just to like think through what your needs are based on who you are and how you're wired, and be able to name the things that are refreshing and are life-giving. For me, it's sitting in the sunshine, it's having very quiet space for a little while, it's reading, it's going on a run. Like, what are those things for you? Naming them and make space for it. And it doesn't have to be some big plan that's unattainable. Just start small and do something. And who are those safe people in your life also that help you, hold you accountable? Like, hey, have you been resting? Because you're kind of acting a little cray cray, to have those people who, because you two are two of those people who would say something if I was not caring for myself, because you would notice. So
Right.
Yeah, tips, I don't know because I feel like it's so subjective to what a person needs. I might just say like one, begin to have the conversation with either your spouse, hey, I don't know that I have a good rhythm of rest and Sabbath. What would that look like for us? Because if you have young kids, finding Sabbath on the weekends just may not be it because you have to be on, parent duty. But begin with the conversations with the significant people in your life. If you have an eldership and oversight, begin to have those conversations. Hey guys, as a minister, I want to be here long term. I want to last. I don't want to burn out. But I've noticed I don't have a good rhythm of rest. Can we have a conversation on what that looks like for me? So begin having those conversations with the people around you that have influence in your life. And then I would also say, as you begin to wrestle with what does that look like for me, some of the things that I do is I think about what makes me happy, what puts a smile on my face. And for me, like Jen said, it is yard work. Winter months are extremely difficult for my own self-care because I get a lot of life being in the sun and the warmth and working on my yard. So I have to get creative in the winter months of like, okay, what does this look like now that that's been taken from me because of the weather and where I live?
It could be
But
worse, just so you know. At least you have sunshine and snow melts there. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
that's true.
it could be worse.
That's true. So I'll go play cornhole competitively. That puts a smile on my face, but that's irregular. So, I'll read, I got to find different ways, but I try to think of like what makes me smile and can I lean into that? So that's a question I ask myself. But yeah, the tip is, start having the conversations, being honest, looking at your calendar and identifying the problems and creating gaps that can allow yourself to um, bake in those moments of rest or days of rest, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I think that's good stuff. I mean, I would say like ask yourself hard questions. Like we even have a self-care inventory on the website. Like that's a free tool that you can use to ask yourself hard questions and develop routines. So like when I do my ascesis or my rule of life, like I don't just include the spiritual things, but like what are my routines, kind of daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. And for some people that's easier than others. Like structure is good for me. I need a little bit of both, but I can be disciplined. For other people around me, being disciplined is really, really tricky, right? And so it's been fun watching that with my, two college kids, right? Like, one is studying voraciously and going to office hours and taking notes and taking practice exams. The other one's like, I got an assignment due tomorrow. Like just probably should start that, right? And it's and you look at their parents and that's pretty much it, right? Like, okay, there's one that's and so I'm very, very boom boom, but I live with two people who are not. And yet sometimes I feel like they do those rhythms better than I do because it's more natural for them. Where I really have to work, it's like stopping for me is work. I mean, I turned my phone on do not just. I had my phone on do not disturb for 7 days, and all of my email was off except for my personal email. Um, and and it took me years to figure out how to do that, but now it's like, oh, this is so nice, right? Like my family can get through, and that's it. And like even the other day, I was in this great group chat with friends, but I just realized it was sucking too much out of me, so I left the chat. Like I'm just like I can't constantly be on, even though I'm missing something really good. But I was getting to the point where I was getting edgy about it. And it's like, then I'm being a jerk. And it's like, that's not who I want to be. So, I mean, I think it is like reading those rhythms, but that's why self care is like habit 6 and like self knowledge is like habit, 1 or 2, because I mean, you can't do any of this without knowing crap about yourself.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been another great conversation. Thanks so much, Jen and Joe. And we'll finish up here with habit 7 in a bit.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. We encourage you to keep the conversation going. Voices in the Wilderness is brought to you by Preparing for Amazement Ministries, where we empower and equip churches and leaders to create lasting and transformational health. Please visit amazed15.org to learn more. We welcome any comments or suggestions for the podcast, for guests, for topics. Simply email us at podcast@amazed15.org.